Good afternoon, Miss Young here. Today we're going to go through what we call a correcting the pseudocode question. This is question 5 from paper 2 of February or March 2024. So let's have a quick read of the question. So an algorithm is written in pseudocode to calculate profits when an item is sold. So values for cost, price and selling price are input. Okay, so we're going to need to input cost price and selling price. And the profit is calculated, so we've got selling price minus cost price, and that is output. And then the input of 0 for either value stops the algorithm. So it's a relatively straightforward task, but let's see how we can grab the easy mark first. So there are certain things that we need to be looking for. What I call first is the matching pairs. So by that I mean that we have a repeat, or if we have a repeat, we're going to expect to see an until. If we have a while, then we're going to expect an end while. If we have a for loop, then we're going to expect a next. And if we have an if, we're going to expect an end if. So these are what I call matching pairs. Once we've looked for matching pairs, then we can look for things that I call pattern matching. So I'll come to pattern matching in a moment. Then we will then look for what I call variable mismatch. Variable mismatch. And then there are a few others which are more specific to other questions, but generally speaking, after that, we'll then come down to the more difficult to diagnose logic errors. So let's start first of all with what I call the matching pairs. So first question is, do we have a repeat? Well, yes, we have a repeat, so we're expecting an until, which we do. We have repeat until. So we're good here. Do we have a while? No, so we're good. Do we have a for? No, so we're good. Do we have an if? Yes, we do have an if. So if we have an if, we're expecting an end if. Instead of an end if, we've got a next, which of course should have been with the for. So we know that instead of next, that should be end if. So the issue is on line 10. And what do we need to do? We need to change next to end if. A relatively straightforward one. So that's our matching pairs dealt with. So what about pattern matching? So with pattern matching, we're looking for things that are done multiple times to see if there's some oddness to the pattern. So we can see here, we need to enter the cost and selling price. So we've got outputs, an output message, an input message, an output message, and we would expect an input message, but instead, sorry, an inputs function, instead we have an output. So we want to be inputting the selling price, not outputting. In fact, output sell would not work because we haven't declared sell anywhere here in any event. So line 5 has a problem. So line 5, and we need to change what are we changing? Outputs to inputs. So that's dealt with pattern matching. Well, just let's see if there are any others. No, there's nothing that kind of repeats. So now we want to look for variable mismatch. Well, we have costs and costs, so that seems good. We have selling and sell, so that seems to be good. Then we have profits is sell minus cost. Well, profit is sell minus cost, so that's good. And profit here, and we're outputting profit, so there's no variable mismatch. So we're done with variable mismatch, so we're now down to logic errors. Now, these are a little bit more difficult to find in many cases. So let's have a look at that in this case. So there are only 2 places where we can have logic errors, and that's line 11 and line 6. So let's go back to the question. It says the input of 0 for either value stops the algorithm. So how can we reword that? We can say that if the cost price is 0 or the selling price is 0, then we want to stop the loop. So we look down here, we say, if the cost is 0 or the cell is 0, then we want that to be true because we want to drop out. So we can see that the logic is absolutely fine in this line here. So the only issue is line 6. Sadly, we don't get half marks here, so we can't just write down line 6, which would be lovely, but that's where we're at. Okay, so what do we want to say here? Well, we want to say we only want to calculate the profits if we have a selling cost, a selling price and a cost price. And so what does this say? Well, this says if we have a cost or we have a sell. So if the cost is 0 but we have a selling price, this will enter into the if condition, and we don't want to do that. If we have a sell price and no cost, it will enter into here. In reality, the cost has to be something. That's what this is saying. If the cost is something and the selling price is something, then we want to calculate the profit and output it. So the issue is that we need to change the or to and. So we want to, correction is to change the or to an and. And so in reality, this is out of 3 marks. These first 2 here, following this, was a relatively straightforward, and that would give you 2 out of 3, which is 66%, which for Cambridge IGCSE is quite a respectable value. So if you weren't to find this one here, I wouldn't beat myself up about it. It certainly took a moment for me to think that one through, most specifically because of the way this is worded. I think that the exam question could be worded better, but by a process of elimination, by going through this process, we can at least then hone it down to the line that it should be, and then generally speaking, if we know it's a logic error, we're down to this point here, then that's where the problem is likely to be, either here or here. So I hope that helps to understand a little bit more about these type of questions, and that's been me, Miss Young, and I'll speak to you later.